Hi everyone. I see quite a few people joining in from all over. We'll just give it another couple of minutes. Wait for more people to join. Wow, I already see questions and answers to questions. So that's very cool. Wow. I believe it's almost 300 of us here now, and we're just about a minute in. Okay, I think this is good enough. We'll start. Uh, Hello, everyone. Uh, Good evening and good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from today. Welcome to this Paperpal product demo. My name is Charlotte, and I've got with me Shardool today. We both work in product management on Paperpal. What this means is that much of our work involves understanding writing challenges that academics face and then building features to simplify the process. So, Shardul will lead this demo today, and he will primarily focus on explaining how AI outlines and some of our features can help you with your first draft. He has personally worked on this particular feature, so we thought that it would be nice to have him here today. Now Shardul has a master's in biotech, and he has worked as an academic researcher, a senior research fellow. He specialized in reproductive and cancer biology for 3 years, and then he transitioned to academic publishing and tech. And it should come as no surprise to you at all that Chadul channels all of his first-hand experience in the frustration and the joy of being a researcher when he builds features on Paperpal. I hope you enjoy what we've got to show you today. But before I hand it over to Shardul, I want to encourage you all to add questions in the Q&A tab, and of course engage in the chat for general banter, and watch out for alerts. uh, that's it. Have fun. Over to you, Shardul.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Thank you so much. Hello and welcome everyone from all around the world. I'm Shardul and I'm from Product Analyst at Paperpal Cactus. If you could quickly confirm, Charlotte, am I audible and is my screen visible?
Yes, I think so.
Awesome, awesome. Very well. So before deeply diving into this particular webinar, which is going to be a demo of how exactly you use Paperpal Copilot to write that first draft of yours, we asked a bunch of questions to all the participants here in our user survey during the registration process, and quite a lot of you got back citing the top challenges that you all face in creating the first draft. And it turns out that these challenges are not very different. We all go through the same challenges. Every researcher, every student who wants to write that first draft, turning ideas and notes into outlines and converting those outlines into paragraphs of text, knowing where to start from, what's the first sentence that should be added, knowing what is the information that is going to go into each of the sections of your paper, creating the outline, knowing how to create these outline. These are all the common issues that we as researchers face. And sure enough, even during my research tenure, while writing my first paper, I faced the very same challenges. At that point of time, I used to think I was alone, but turns out that is not the case. A quick search on any social media platform or any academic forum shows that many people across the world go through the same problems, the same challenges. Writing their first draft, where to begin, what should I write, how to begin. For a researcher, the main question in drafting, let's say, an original research article that is going to be the first draft of an article that they're going to be writing. How do I convert 2 plus, 3 plus, or even 5 plus years of research into 2,500 or 5,000 words? How do I bring all that research chaos into a very coherent narrative? That is where the starting trouble is for most of our users, most of our researchers. And so at Paperpal, we took up this challenge and we sought out to find an automated solution where users can begin to start writing their draft. How can we automate that process? And to be able to find some solutions to this automation, we asked ourselves, what is it, how is it that users generally write? Like maybe a researcher or any other writer, how is it that they generally write? Because a draft is very personalized. Every draft tells your story. Like my draft will tell my research story, right? So then we found out some few methods by which users generally go about it. Some people prefer to start verbally. They will speak out loud. They will start writing whatever they speak out loud. Some write on the go and improvise and iterate on the go. The thoughts can keep coming in, keep on flowing in. There is no structure, there is no pattern. And then later on, they sit, they improvise, they structure, restructure, add more content. That could be something. And for researchers, especially who are writing their first research article, an original research article for that matter, the divide and conquer works very well. And what I mean by divide and conquer is every research article will have a very definite structure. For example, a common one is an IMRAD structure. You have an introduction, methods, results, discussions, and conclusions, and all the other rest of the paper, right? So then you can start beginning by writing the method section because that is not going to change. Whatever experiments you did, they are static. The results that you obtained, they are static. So you can begin with the methods, then go to the results section, then start writing the introduction section because that is where you have a narrative flow. That is where you need to present your side of the story. So that is divide and conquer right there. And the other, the more common approach is writing an outline. For example, what I mean by when I say writing an outline, we all have these thoughts and an idea. We know exactly what we want to say, but we don't know how to put that on paper, right? So you write those thoughts as outlines, as bullet points, and then you expand upon it. And so at Paperpal, we took up this idea of, let's say, using outlines as the starting material to provide a rough skeleton to your draft, and then to be able to flesh out that skeleton accordingly as per your narrative, to be able to drive that outline to tell a story that you want to say. And that is where we bring in Paperpal Copilot, the outline or AI generated outline features of Paperpal Copilot. So we took up the idea of an outline. Like, fair enough. We know that we can begin with an outline. Now the question was, how do we automate it? Like every story that every user, let's say each one of us has to say is going to be different. So how do we automate this process? So then we went back to the drawing board. We went and looked at, let's say, the academic world, the academic publishing world, and we asked, what is it that researchers usually write about? Like, is it just an essay? Is it just an email? Or what are the first manuscripts that they write, for example? And that's when we found out that an original research article is the first thing, let's say, the first actual writing material that you will face in your publication journey or in your research journey. And thankfully, most of the research papers out there, let's say across subject areas, they follow a pretty standard structuring, right? As I mentioned, IMRAD is one such structuring for an original research article. So we looked at published original research article papers that were structured as per the IMRAD outline. We trawled through thousands of such papers, did some linguistic analysis, made some sense of the patterns that we could note, structured it, and then gave rise to outline. On the screen, I give you a very small peek into what exactly I mean by the linguistic analysis, the mapping, and the structuring. And to your left, as you can see, are sentence starters by which, let's say, published papers have begun certain sentences. For example, let's say an aim section or an objective section. There emerges a certain pattern in which these words are used, these phrases are used. And from those phrases, we can collate, combine, and compress all of them to generate a very good starting material for, let's say, an objective section. Similarly, we can find the same thing to start writing a background section, a knowledge gap section, so on and so forth. Now, what exactly I mean by all of this? Let's quickly do a demo of the same so that I can run you through what exactly I mean. Well, so most of us, we have our journey starting from a blank screen, let's say. Now, it's not entirely true that we always start with a blank screen. Along with the blank screen, we also have our reference materials, our papers, our research papers that we look up to, that we read, that we cite, that we take content from. You have your notes, and then you have your thoughts. But how do we transform all of that into a structure, into an outline, into, let's say, a paragraph of text? That is what I show you exactly right now. So as you can see on screen, I have a topic of interest, for example, that's climate change and its impact on mental health. I have 5 sentences. There's no particular structure. There is no flow of information. I just written some background about it. I know what I'm looking for. My study is basically to check how climate change is going to affect health. Now, how can I use this very limited, very generic piece of information to write an outline section? Let's look at that. So for inside Paperpal Copilot, you have the generate feature, and inside generate, you have outlines. So in outlines, you go to research article. For this demo, I'm going to show you how to write an introduction section of an original research article. So we begin with, this is our starting material that we are going to use to start writing our paper. Now, there are some forms to be filled. For example, I'm going to write an introduction section. So I click on introduction. There you go. Field of study. So it's climate change and impact on mental health. We can call it life sciences. These are very broad field of study. You don't have to be very specific and narrow. And here, in the brief description of the study section, you select the entire text that you begin with. Now, this is where, let's say, we combine the information that you as a writer, you as a user have provided, and we bring in AI to the mix. And then the magic happens. Now, the AI inside Paperpal Copilot will take in this bare bones instruction, the brief description of the study, to understand what exactly the study is about, and then generate an outline for the introduction section. Now, as you see, the outline is being generated as we speak. I'll quickly talk about all these different subheadings that you see. So there you go. The outline has been generated. So let me show you how I can use this
Shardul,
outline.
Shardul,
Yeah.
interruption. You are on 125 Zoom, just checking in.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Carry on.
Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible to me, but there's a comment just saying that it's not visible. So, okay.
Okay. Can we confirm that everything is
Yeah,
visible on the screen?
yeah, I think you can carry on for now if you're already on 125. It seems to be
Okay.
fine for most users. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Awesome. Well, so we have generated the outline. The AI inside Copilot has generated the outline using the starting text, a very generic starting text. And I have the outline ready. I'm going to insert the outline over here. So as you can see, this is the outline that AI has generated. So when we were developing outlines, we thought we asked this question to ourselves, like, how do we automate something that a user can use based on their personal information, their small bits of research ideas, few sentences, customize it, bring in AI to the mix, and give control to the user as well, like to drive the narrative as in how they want it. So there you can see that is where the outline provides a very good template or a starting material to begin with. Now, as you can see in this outline, you have different subheadings. You have the background, you have the topic importance, the existing knowledge gap, so on and so forth. So, what do these mean? So, this does not mean that your entire paper needs to have these background. What the AI is telling you, or what Copilot is basically guiding you, is to say that is to say that your introduction section should have all of these particular information. For example, a good introduction section of an original research article should ideally begin with a background statement. There should be at least one or two sentences on the background of the study. Then it should move into the topic importance. So after you have discussed the background and the topic importance, you go on to the existing knowledge. So that is where the bulk of the literature review comes into the picture. Now let us use this particular outline to expand upon the initial paragraph that I had provided here. Well, let's go ahead one by one. So I read the background. Climate change is a global phenomena that is a topic of concern for decades. That seems good enough as a very generic background. Fine. And we have a similar sentence over here. Climate change is a pressing issue. Fine. I can perhaps use this, let's say, and maybe I move it over here. And for the sake of understanding, I'm going to use it bold font face over here so that we are able to distinguish what exactly has been picked up from the outline and what is the original text. So now you have two lines of background. Now I don't stop right here, right? So every time you have a background, as I mentioned, every time we start writing a paper, we already have a bunch of literature at hand. We have our notes. So we have read those literature. We know exactly what we want goes into our paper. The outline gives you how to bring that into a paper. So maybe I'll add some notes saying add references slash more content. So I can go back to my literature. I can specifically look at the background information that I am interested in adding to my paper. For example, it could be some statistics about, let's say, a very particular type of climate change or a very particular type of mental health impact, so on and so forth. That's up to your discretion, depending on your research. So Copilot next tells us that after the background statement, you should have a topic importance statement. Now, the topic importance that it recommends us is the impact of climate change are far-fetching and you have significant consequences on human health and well-being. Again, pretty generic based on the starting data that we provided. So fine. So perhaps I will move it over here. Why here? Because I already have another general background already present in my starting material. So I'm going to move this particular topic important statement recommended by Copilot over here. Now, because this is a topic important statement, there definitely has to be more references because there would be references, there would be studies out there which has analyzed certain impacts of climate change on mental health. So again, this is basically a note for myself so that I can come back here, add very specific information according to the topic importance. Next, Copilot recommends that you add an existing knowledge statement. The existing knowledge it recommended us is previous studies have explored the relationship between climate change and health, but there is still much to be learned about the complex mechanisms and pathways involved. Okay, I'm going to select this. Do I have an existing knowledge statement in my original text? I do not see one where I'm citing previous references. Fine, fair enough. So maybe I'll place it over here. Let's see. I place it over here and I boldface it. So here you have a background, and then you have the topic importance, and then you have existing knowledge. So previous studies have explored the relationship between climate change and health, but much is still to be learned. Fair enough. Because we are citing existing studies, we definitely need to add more references. So I add a note to myself, add references. So there you go. I have fleshed out a section for the existing knowledge. What next? Copilot tells us that after the existing knowledge, we need to have a knowledge gap for the flow of information. For example, every time you read a research article, you read an introduction section, there's a background, there's a topic importance, there's an existing knowledge, but then there also has to be a knowledge gap. What was not known in the existing papers that you are trying to find out? What is your study? What is the deficit that you are trying to fulfill? That is where the knowledge gap comes in. And let's say you have the knowledge gap. So I will place it, let's say mental health concerns, anxiety. All right, I can place it over here because here I can again referring to mental health. So this can be part of the existing knowledge section and this can go as part of the knowledge gap. And again, if you have some references, some papers that you want to refer to, or if you want to add more content, very specific content, you can go ahead and make a note to add references or add more content. There you go. Now you have an entire one paragraph which talks about the background, the topic importance, the knowledge gap, and the existing knowledge. Copilot recommends that our introduction should also have a rationale statement. The rationale is basically us answering the question of why did we do this research? Why did I do this research? Basically, you have a knowledge gap, and then you have a rationale to do the research to address that knowledge gap. And does the statement read? Fine, let us see. The study aims to address these knowledge gaps by examining the relationship between climate change and health in more detail, identifying strategies for managing the impact of climate change. This looks good. Again, depending upon your study, depending upon your very specific study objectives or study rationale, you can modify that. Because this is a rationale statement, I presume that there won't be any need for citations here because this is something that you have done yourself. Each one of us has done ourselves for that matter. Going forward, Copilot recommends that it's good to have a research question. Now, here's the thing. So, although Copilot recommends certain subheadings to be included inside the introduction section, it is not necessary that each of this should be present. For example, you might not have a very specific research question. For example, this rationale that you have provided over here, that might suffice for your study. So, in that case, a very specific research question might not be needed. So, if that case is, as users, you can feel free to skip certain sections and take the ones that are very applicable, most applicable to you. But if I had to place the research question, I'm just going to place it after the rationale. So here you go. I have asked a very specific research question. What are the specific health impacts of climate change? And maybe we can modify the sentence later on. We can add our own text. This particular study asks the following research question, so on and so forth. Then Copilot recommends that we should have an aim and objective statement. Now, I ideally had an aim statement here, I remember. Yep, there you go. The study checks how climate change affects health and how we can manage it. It's pretty generic. slightly informal study checks how climate change. What does Copilot recommend? The aim of the study is to investigate the relationship between climate change and identify strategies. Yep, that's more specific. That sounds a bit more formal. I can perhaps replace this with this one. This seems like a much better idea. Again, if your study has, let's say, multiple objectives, if you have looked at multiple aims, you can feel free to add that multiple aims here. The outline generated is purely based on the input text. Copilot next recommends that we should have a hypothesis statement. Like I said, it's not necessary that every study will have a hypothesis. Now, I need not have an hypothesis. So I knew there was a knowledge gap. There was a rationale for me to do my research. So I did that research. I found out all the results that I needed to. So I don't need the hypothesis statement. So I'm not going to add the hypothesis statement. So if we look at where we are right now, well, there you go. We began with 5 very vague sentences that we used as input for the outline, the Paperpal Copilot outline feature. And what we have right now is a much more structured, a much more focused paragraph, or let's say at least 2 paragraphs. And now, when you go back and look at your literature, when you go back and look at your references that you want to include in the paper, you know exactly what you will be looking for in those papers and what you will be adding in this particular introduction section to expand upon it, to flesh it out more. Because I'm not going to be using this introduction section as is. It needs more content, it needs to be refined a little bit more. Similarly, as users, depending upon your research area, depending upon your very specific research questions, you will have to modify it. So once that is done, you can perhaps do some rephrasing or rewriting, trimming of sentences, or in the least, you can just go to the languages option over here and make some changes to language based on the suggestions that are given over here. And once that is done, once you have added all the references that need to go in, I think an introduction section is all set and good to go. And now we can proceed to the next thing, that's perhaps the method section or result section. And that's how you can use Copilot or the outline features of Copilot specifically to flesh out an entire outline and then start drafting sections of your original research paper with just minimum text using AI. And before I conclude, let's also see. So the research article or a research paper, it's a very specific form of article, right? Not everybody might be needing to write a research paper. For example, if you're, let's say, a postgraduate student, the first thing you might be writing would be a report or a statement of purpose or an essay for that matter. So I'll also quickly show you how exactly the essay looks like. Say I want to write about climate change and impact on mental health. There you go. I just give it 7 words. And then Copilot will analyze those 7 words and then it generates an outline, a very solid starting ground for you, so that as a user, you are in control of where you are driving that narrative, what content needs to go in there. And then you can just, well, there you go. You have an entire outline for an essay ready. Let's quickly insert it here. There you go. Introduction, define climate change, briefly mention the impact, a thesis statement, and then so on and so forth. So yeah, that's pretty much part of the demo here, and that's exactly how you can use the outline features of Paperpal Copilot to start with, let's say, bare minimum text and to go ahead and draft an entire introduction section that can be fleshed out further, refined further, and then submitted as part of your first paper or your first draft. So that's part of the demo. Over to you, Charlotte.
Thanks so much, Shardool. I hope I'm visible now. So this seems to have triggered a fair bit of discussion in the Q&A forum and the chat, and we've been trying to respond as much as possible. But before we go to the Q&A, I just wanted to share that we have an exclusive for participants of this webinar. This is a discount code that will give you 30% off on Paperpal Prime, and it's available until March 10th. So I hope you use it. Now moving on to Q&A. So we've received quite a few questions. So we've tried to address as many as possible. But I think I'll sort of just touch upon a few pertinent ones, especially the ones that have been upvoted. Um, can Paperpal be added to Microsoft Word like Grammarly? Yes, we have a Word add-in. It's available on paperpal.com, and I believe my colleague has put in a link. If you can also add it to the chat, would be great. Um, yes, the recording will be available on email. On to questions related to the features. So we have almost 12 upvotes for this question by Julie. Thanks, Julie. Is this allowed, or would it be viewed as plagiarism since we use AI to write the manuscript? And I think that's a very important question to be asking. When we started building AI-based features, we were talking to researchers like yourself who were expressing concerns like this as well. And with the with AI generation sort of taking the world by storm, a lot of policy making around universities and journals it's just slowly started to catch up. But the general consensus, even though it's maybe official, unofficial in some cases, the general consensus is that it could be viewed as plagiarism. And so a lot of universities generally recommend using AI tools, but making sure you disclose them. So you'd have to make sure you check with your journal or a university, as the case may be. If it's allowed to use AI tools, they can be dead useful, and can save a lot of time. But I think that it's always good to, number one, check if it's allowed, disclose it as per the guidelines, and of course check for plagiarism as much as possible, because the sources generated and the sources that the training data set might actually contain published sources, which may increase your plagiarism similarity score. So potential plagiarism is a possibility you should always guard against. And the other thing that I also personally recommend is that while using any AI generated text, and I tend to use it a lot while writing as well, is that it doesn't always sound like you. So definitely, take suggestions, build on it, and and you can maybe address that in that way. Okay, moving on. The next one is okay. Sorry, so that was the previous question. I'm going to mark this as answered. Thank you, Julie. Um, this one, okay, so this one's from Shavanan from India. Thank you. If used for initial draft, should I mention? I think so. The thing is, it's still some use, and I think it's always safe to err on the side of caution. If you need to disclose, you should disclose what you have used and what you have used it for. Maybe I used uh, Paperpal's outline builder to create an initial draft, and then I built upon it, like Shardul covered in his presentation. I weaved in my own sources, and sort of just started from there. So I think it would be safer to do that. So yes. Just move on. Okay, here's another one. So, how different is this from Jenny and Cloud? I would say the secret sauce that we've integrated here primarily lies in the fact that we did all of this linguistic analysis. I think the large language models, the the generative AI in and of itself is great. If you go and put in a prompt and say, "Give me an outline for a research article," we'll give you an outline. But what we've done is we've tapped into thousands of papers, and we have created custom outlines for specific fields. So I think that's what makes an outline generated by a Jenny or a Cloud or a GPT different from one that PaperPal has created. And it not only just gives you a general outline, but gives you a space to add a little bit of your subject context. So we weave in the structure that we've created for each section, and we sort of customize it customize it to exactly your subject matter. And I think that's what makes a little bit of a difference. I personally think might be a little bit more relevant. Okay. just this one is answered. Okay, here's one. Seems to be general. Is Paperpal Turnitin detectable for plagiarism? And okay, so we've got a few answers. We've gotten into major detail in the chat itself, but yes, output from Paperpal has been, generated from AI, and so it might cite sources from its published training data set, and so Turnitin could flag it for similarity. So there is a possibility this might happen. So it's always good to use, when you're using Paperpal, Copilot, or the language check, it's always good to run it with our plagiarism check feature, which we also have on the product available on Prime. It's always good to check on both sides. I'm going to mark this as answer. And let me see if there's another one. Uh, Sorry, just going through this. I'm trying to look for relevant questions. Okay, not sure this is relevant. So, LC says that you can't see the Copilot section. That's probably because it's hidden inside. So the outline section is hidden inside Paperpal Copilot. You have to go into it. You have to click on Generate, and then inside Generate, you'll find the outlines feature. I hope you find it. It's a great feature. There are lots more inside Generate. Uh, I Oh, there's a good one. This is actually from chat. So we have one of our colleagues pasted it in the Q and A. It's a good question. Thanks for asking. Can it assess a written introduction to check for what is missing or to enhance its layout? We've gotten this feedback. It's a great enhancement. We are working on a feature right now that reads your text and then gives you a critique of your paper, your section. And I think that could be a game changer in addition to all of the features that are present right now. So we're working on something. It should hopefully be out in a few months. So this one, uh, why? Okay. Uh, I've answered why Paperpal might be a better choice than ChatGPT. Maybe relates to the Jenny question. Um, Okay, should we, if we use Paperpal for paraphrasing, should we mention that it is AI generated? Yes, I think that any sort of use of Paperpal, whether it's language check for grammar or paraphrasers, even if it's light use, if your university or your journal that you're publishing with requires you to disclose, it's always good to specify what you've used it for. Now, some of you may use AI tools beyond just writing. You may use it to brainstorm. You may use it to get ideas. You may use a different tool. You may use multiple tools. You may use it for literature search. I think it's always good to, the best practice in at least my conversations with colleagues in the industry have been to keep a record of which tools you use, what you have used it for, if it's writing, if it's literature search, if it's critique, all sorts of things, and sort of disclose that in as much detail as possible, because it will be, I think it's the ethical thing to do at the end of the day. um, okay, wow, there's one question that I'm not sure if I can actually get all of them. Let me see. Hmm. Okay, so okay, I'm just going to get to a few. How to use in social sector research. So right now with outlines, we've released outlines for three broad subject areas: physical sciences or engineering, medical or life sciences, and also um, what was the other one? Medicine and life sciences. We're missing humanities right now, but we want to add it really soon. Um, I think you should still be able to try it with your subjects. Try using it. Choose life sciences or the closest possible subject area. So much of research is cross disciplinary anyway. So yeah, okay. So my colleagues are telling me that there are questions on references which I am unable to see, but just gonna quickly reference that. We are releasing a feature built around citations where you can add your citations, style them to thousands of styles, and and basically we'll be evolving the feature to look at references a lot more and the literature a lot more. So that's coming very soon in the next couple of months. We noticed that this is actually one of the biggest things that our users find missing while writing. They've got their reference managers or they've got something else somewhere else where they're using to check questions and to ask Q&A, to ask questions in the literature. And we want to be able to bridge that gap so you don't have to leave the product while writing. So that's coming in. Uh, so I see one here saying the text generated by Paperpal looks very generic to me. Fortunately, so the AI generation piece is based on large language models, and so a lot of it is found is I think that's a good thing. A lot of it sounds generic. It doesn't sound like how you would sound or how I would sound like a human. And I think that AI, where it is today, sort of present just to help you as a starting point. Um, and then you need to make it sound like you a little bit. Um, so yeah, so I think that can be turned into a benefit rather than something negative. Um, okay, I think more or less. Okay, I see variations of previous sentences, so I don't want to get into them, and we're almost 40 minutes in. Um, okay, yeah. All right, I think this might be a good time to pause because I'm not seeing anything new. If we have missed something, please write in to us at hello@paperpal.com. We've also shared a feedback form. So please drop in your feedback so we can use it to improve future demos. I hope this was useful. Um, oh, uh, and yeah, and just 1 second. Am I missing anything? Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for your active participation. Have a lovely day and all the best with your writing goals.